So Jim, we're gonna give you the opportunity to share with us based on the information that I gave you, the information that you want us to know. And what we'll do is once we've heard from everyone, all of the folks who are involved in responding to what you need, we will then be reaching out to you to make sure that we're clear on what those next steps are going to be.
Okay.
Damon and Anthony will also have access to the presentation. So anything that comes up on their side of the shop, they will then be reaching out to respond to that as well. All right?
Okay. Sounds
So
good.
All right. So go right ahead.
All right. Well, just kind of want to start off with just, let's see if that's right. Oops. Our data points. And are you saying that the slide changed because I have it up on two different screens?
I just see CMAS proficiency right now.
Perfect. Okay, then I've got you on the right sharing one. So basically, overall, we had 13.6% of our kids hit proficient or above in ELA, which actually was a 5.2% jump for us. So that was like the biggest increase we've seen in quite a while for ELA. However, we have a large amount in does not meet, almost 39% of our third, fourth, and fifth graders. In math, we stayed pretty stagnant. We've always been hovering around 4%, 5%. That stayed the same as far as met or exceeds, but we ended up with a lot more kids falling backwards into does not meet. Wanted to show just that 3-year trajectory of what we've been seeing in our third, fourth, and fifth grades. A lot of the jump that we had in ELA, some of it in fifth grade, but a lot of it came from our third graders who aren't counted in growth. So that's where you're going to see a discrepancy with our SPF. So while we did increase in ELA by 5.2%, just our overall growth is not reflected because it's third grade. In math, we've still been pretty stagnant, but we took a huge dive, especially in fourth grade math, if you can see. We only had one student who met or exceeded, and it was only met actually in math. And that's where you're going to see also a huge tank in growth from our third graders from the prior year to testing in fourth grade last year. So this was just our overall growth percentile from Tableau as compared to district. We were actually slightly above the growth percentile for reading, but well below for math. And if you can see just our 2 grade levels that count for growth, it was our fifth graders who were above that 50th percentile mark and kind of salvaged just as much as they could, but it was in both ELA and in math, our fourth grade team really did not show what we were hoping for and really took a slide backwards. This is also from Tableau. It shows basically how kids did in the prior year and then comparing that to the current year. And my biggest concern is if you look at the one on the right in math, you'll see kids who stayed in that top left orange box. There were 44 kids who were does not meet 2 years ago, and then again last year stayed in that category. But more concerning is if you go right directly below that, 17 kids had been at partially met and they moved backwards to does not meet. And even below that, there were 2 kids who were approaching who went back 2 levels all the way to does not meet. So we had kids, we've normally been really strong in our growth, and we actually were having kids go backwards. We saw a little bit of that in ELA, but more so in math. And you can see that again, even in the next category, the next column, the second on the right, kids who were partially met, 18 of them stayed in that category, or 22 stayed in that category, but 11 of them actually went backwards from approaching the prior year to 11 of them being partially met. And then 2 kids who were met or exceeded went all the way back to partially met. So the real concern is that not only were we just staying stagnant for proficiency, but we're going backwards in growth for math last year. So you're going to see that reflected on our school performance framework since that's mostly growth. We were at 51.3% last year. We were less than 2 percentage points away from being a green performance school, and we really thought we were going to be able to close that gap. And then we went backwards all the way to 44%, which is only now 2 percentage points away from being priority improvement. So when you look over on the right side, that kind of shows where we really fell back into yellow. We were green in every area last year other than students with disabilities. Last year we were red with students with disabilities, but our end count this year was not high enough. If we'd put that in and they had still been just as low, we might have been a priority improvement school this year. So we have the numbers this year in 4th and 5th grade, but they will impact us this year. And so that is an area we need to focus on quite a bit. The other piece that was new for us was the ELP didn't count last year, but it did count this year. And so an area we were looking at with our number of English language learners, we have 258 who count on this test for growth for 4th and 5th. And we were approaching for the number of kids who are hitting proficiency, and that's being redesignated. We actually went up from 13 that's being redesignated 2 years ago to 27, but we're still in the yellow. The other one is the on track to proficiency, and I had to meet several times with our CLDE consultant as well as our TL. And what that really comes down to is this next slide. The blue says how fast kids have to grow on access. So they, on the blue slide, they have like 1 year to be a NEP 1. They can be a NEP 2 for 2 years. They can be a NEP 3 for 3 years. And we only had 6 and then so forth. And if they're not going if they're going at that rate, we get to count them. We only had about 60% of our kids from our SPF, 60.1%, who were moving at the correct rate. And so when we look at that, we are below the 15th percentile on the left for elementary. So we have to get all the way up to the 72% of kids moving at the correct rate for us to be green in that area. So that's an area we are looking at right now and trying to see which kids we have been. We notice a lot of them have been at level 3 for 2 or 3 years already. So how can we support those students and making sure that they move to a level 4? Likewise for level 2, if they've already been there, this is for 2 years, how do we make sure that this year they're moving to a level 3? So those were some areas that we are looking at. And going back to that, we're really close in a lot of areas for ELA turning green, like our English language learners are only 1 percentile away from being green again. But in math, we're really quite low due to that 4th grade taking that backwards. We're only at the 38th and 30th percentiles for math. So this kind of just shows our growth and our proficiency over the last 3 years. If we look at ELA over on the left in proficiency, like I said, we went from just being kind of stagnant, 10%, 8%, and then we took a pretty good jump for us, over 5% last year and hitting 13.6 proficiency. Math continues to be stagnant in proficiency. The bigger concern that we saw that really hit our SPF was over on the right, the median growth percentile. We've been hitting over that 50th percentile expected mark in ELA for the last 3 years. And in math last year, we were much higher, 53rd percentile, and completely flipped those numbers. And so that's really what affects our SPF is 4th grade math. Just threw in our iReady diagnostic from August, and we were trying to compare, did this match what we're seeing in CMAS? The reading one looked a little bit lower, but when we lost all those 5th graders who were the ones who really helped us out, that's probably pretty close. And here's what it looks like by grade level. I only had 1 kindergarten teacher who took the diagnostic because they're not required to, but she wanted to. So that only represents 1 kindergarten class, but the rest are pretty close to where we're at. And so looking at this, we noticed that this also matches what teachers are seeing with kids coming into 1st and 2nd grade. We have a lot of students who are still at a pre-reader level. And so we are looking at putting a lot of literacy supports into those lower levels so that we're not playing catch up during those testing grades. Saw the same things in math. We were 5.2% on CMAS for math. And overall, when we're counting all our grades on iReady, we were at 4, so it's looking very similar. Again, that's 1 kindergarten class, but the rest represent the entire 3 sections, and every other grade level other than 5th has 4. And it looks very similar. 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we were at 5.2% on CMAS. We're right at 5% there, but a really high number of kids in the red on iReady, even more so than it reflects on CMAS. So our goals for this year are just that 5%. We really feel like we can make this in ELA. We made it last year, and that would bump us up to 18.6. But we really have to target how do we get the kids out of the red since we had more fall backwards. Math is going to be a harder push for us since we've been stagnant for years in math. we're going to really need some support to get to that 10.2, as well as moving kids out of the red to did not meet. So we did some tweaks to our 90-day plan after we got all of our data, and we really have made it around hitting that 5%. Our major improvement strategies, we've actually almost gone back to basics. For the first time in a long time, we have started collecting weekly lesson plans. We collected them all first quarter, and we're doing walkthroughs to see if they match. And what we've really seen is a lack of systemic lesson planning. It looks very different in different classrooms. The intentionality based on data is not equitable across our classrooms. So we are going to spend a lot of time for the rest of this 90-day plan, the rest of this first semester, creating systemic expectations. We want to get to the point where we can really push kids with higher DOK and critical thinking and application. But if our basic lesson planning isn't there, it's not going to happen. So our action steps are over on the right. The DDI days from the district really fit us perfectly this year. It's really a good time to reset and make sure that we are intentionally using data to do everything, to set our goals and target instruction and really have appropriate reteaching opportunities. We are trying to find ways to have time to backwards unit plan in math and literacy. If teachers just don't have the time, it seems like they are doing day-by-day planning and just trying to get through the day. So that day when we come back on the 21st, getting ready to plan actually with Melanie Bosquez today for a couple hours, and we are spending half the day on literacy and half the day on math of looking at our interims, doing backwards unit planning, and then doing weekly planning. Which goes along with the third bullet. We are, as an ILT team, creating systemic expectations for intentional planning. So while we just collected plans to get a baseline for where teachers were at for first quarter, on the 21st, our ILT is rolling out, here are the things at a foundational level that all lesson plans at Altura need to include. And that includes our special education, our speech path, our counselor who's doing SEL lessons. Every lesson has to include some specific pieces that ILT is rolling out on that day. We are also kind of resetting our PLCs, really trying to give ownership to teachers, but it all has to be based on their classroom data and what students need and how do we practice our teaching strategies according to the plans we've made so that we can execute them more effectively. Also, something we have not done well in the past during PLCs and during DDI days is creating and using exemplars and rubrics of proficiencies with students. So that is another layer we are trying to add both into DDI and our PLCs, and trying to get to the point where we are not only goal setting for ourselves, but goal setting alongside students and providing regular feedback to those goals. And the other piece that we really need to focus on is providing coaching to help with that. We have folks at various levels. We have 11 new teachers in the building this year, and we really need some assistance with just making sure that there's opportunities for assistance with planning, having someone model lessons, and to receive some non-evaluative feedback so that teachers feel safe enough to take some risks in their classrooms. So the current action steps that we are already doing. Just a couple weeks ago, we took a walkthrough with our intermediate classrooms, especially in the 5th grade classrooms where those 4th graders who did not do well on CMAS last year, we wanted to see what it looked like for their instruction in 5th grade so that we can work on getting back to where they need to be. So did some walkthroughs with Sue Lynn and Jim Hogan to look at math practices in those growth grade levels. What we saw was a lack of common planning and a lack of alignment to bridge. So we have completely reset expectations for that grade level. We have and given them the curriculum component from the infrastructure that shows what's tight and flexible, and made sure they understood that use of a resource that's already aligned to standards is not one of the flexible expectations, it's one of the tight ones. So we are getting some help from Melanie Bosquez and our new teaching partner that's going to start on the 21st with a heavy background in math. And also was doing professional development for Houghton Mifflin, really strong in math, and he's going to help lead PLCs and PD around that to make sure that teachers understand how to use the strategies. What we also saw was that within Bridges, a lot of the teachers aren't comfortable with a lot of the models and strategies, and so they've been kind of selecting those that are their favorites. So we're going to help them actually practice those during PLCs with the help of the teaching partner and Melanie. Melanie's already been in our PLCs to help at the upper level, but she's also been working in reading in those lower levels where we have some students who are really low, and we also have an entire new first grade team. So she's been helping them unpack bridges, do planning, been videotaping, and having conversations that are reflective to help get them in the right spot. Like I said, on the 21st, our entire school PD is going to be around intentional planning for Q2. We're also looking at ways to do that at the beginning of every unit. So how do we maybe back up to our specials, technology time, our mindfulness classes, and our library time so that as needed before a new unit starts, we can take a double block of planning to make sure that we're doing that same intentional planning throughout the year. ILT has spent the whole first quarter doing a book study called Improving Student Learning One Teacher at a Time by Jane Pollock, who's done some work with Marzano, but really looking at the components of assessment and data and intentional planning and what are those components. We looked at that piece, and then we aligned that to the UVA rubric on curriculum components, and we found which pieces aligned with lesson planning. And then we also looked at standard 1 of the teaching rubric, and to get to a proficient level 3, what are the important components of lesson planning? What we are presenting on the 21st is really just a foundational expectation for lesson planning. There are a lot of pieces that we even argued among ILT that are really important, such as DOK and certain scaffolds and differentiation, but realizing that our entire school is not at a place where they have been ready to have that common expectation. We're going to start at a foundational systemic expectation, and then our plan is for Q3 to roll out some more layers that take us deeper so that kids can get to that critical thinking and applying their learning in deeper ways. Some pieces that have been helping us kind of unpack some of our really root cause holes. We hired an additional behavioral interventionist. Now we have 2 folks in the office who, one helps with K2, Tier 1 and Tier 2 behaviors, and another who works with 3-5 as well as restorative practices. And they've been able to take care of all the radio calls. They've been able to help teachers with behavior management. They've been able to help parents on the playground, which has really allowed administration to be in classrooms a ton already. And it's been showing us what we've kind of been missing the last few years when we've been focused on all the fires. And it's really gotten us to a point where we've been able to give feedback to teachers on a weekly basis and to really have some hard conversations and start moving ILT forward with the right work. To help with some of our other pieces, we did hire one of our teachers to be half-time in the classroom and to pilot her as a half-time math interventionist. She's one of our teachers who piloted Bridges in 3rd grade and has been very successful with it at that team that's done well. And so she is starting off her work with our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and she's using the Bridges intervention. She's been doing some work with Jim Hogan, and she's been finding where some of our gaps are with unfinished learning and is working to try to catch kids up so that they can work on grade level math. Then we're gonna go backwards at semester and start looking at our primary kids and who also has some gaps there that she might be able to work with. We've also, for her other counterpart in the classroom, taken another 3rd grade teacher who teaches the other half of the day, and she is serving as an ESL interventionist. So for those kids where she started off her work with more of our immigrants and refugees who just needed to get their feet under them to be successful at school, but now is spending her day on the 21st looking at some of those kids who, when we looked at that blue slide, how fast kids have to move to be considered to be moving at the appropriate on-track rate for English language proficiency. She's going to look and see which of those students are the best ones to maybe work with so that we can make sure that they are gaining the language gains they need to make to be on track. The general counselor we got from the mill levy money has been really successful in providing every week a block of time for teachers and their classrooms to go to mindfulness one week, and the next week working on some social emotional learning so that they can be more self-regulated in class, deal with issues in the class more, have common language around how to deal with when things aren't going their way. And it has also helped reduce a lot of the behaviors and it's giving teachers a toolkit. So it's been helping kids be able to stay in the academic environment a longer amount of time. So things that Altura needs from the Division of Equity and Learning. We're already getting some of this, but just need to make sure that it continues. The coaching support, right now we have Melanie Bosquez, who's kind of been a godsend for us already since I didn't have a teaching partner in the first quarter. but she's starting to help with lesson studies. She's definitely been helping with PLCs and definitely been helping get our new teachers onboarded. I've just reached out recently to ESS for some curriculum alignment and monitoring for effective needs. We got 3 different people who are helping with 2 brand new teachers to AN. That one we just got hired a few weeks ago, and one is on alternative licensure. And then we've also got with the ESS for mild mod with the extra coaching that we're supposed to be getting there. So going to need some continued support there. We've been short a mild mod teacher all year. We finally just got an agency hire who started this week. Got a lot to learn to be able to be effective in that role. And so our other 2 mild mod teachers have been taking on a lot. And it hasn't been a smooth start. So we're going to need a lot of support with ESS. Definitely going to need continued support from CLDE, help really unpack that data from our SPF and really make sure that we're identifying students who are not on track for expected ELP growth. I'm struggling to find how to pull that information from Tableau. We've been by hand, my ESL interventionist has been pulling by hand, trying to find kids who've been at that level 3 and it's their 3rd year and they have to move to level 4 so we can really push them academically. But she's been having to do that by hand. And so we haven't found a good report that helps us really identify who's on track and who's not on track. And then it'd be really helpful since I have so many new people, as well as I finally have folks who've been here a while, but are finally ready to go deeper with Wonders and Bridges. They have the basics, but they still could use support in finding where to start sometimes with planning and how to go deeper in certain areas. So if there's additional coursework that's offered, I think that would be really helpful on some PD days or even as an extra. As far as HR needs, we really struggled with not only teaching partner, but mild mod and effective needs this year. Like I said, teaching partners starting right after fall break, and other folks just got hired, and mild mod is still an agency hire that I'd like to actually find someone that fits us. So it just other ways to advertise. We've tried CASE, that didn't help, and we're just not finding the right people for some high needs positions. Also just some other things that kind of affect just teacher motivation is just sometimes a lack of cleanliness in our building, sometimes trash outside, and things that we have to keep reminding custodial services to help with and to do, which just kind of puts an agitation on teachers and just one more layer that isn't necessary. But that's all I've got for you.
Jen, thanks for that. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you've given us areas to think through. And our job next week actually is for those that are going to be here. We're going to go back through this to make sure that we capture specifically the things that you need. And folks from our team are going to reach out to make sure we understood what you're asking for from us, and then how to go ahead and plan with you what the next steps are going to be. Right? The next time that we come together, it's going to be about, did we do what we promised? Are we doing exactly what it is that we said we were going to do when we engaged you after this presentation? So thank you for that, and I look forward to our work, and listen out for us next week.
All right, really appreciate your time. Thank you all.
Right.